Hello everyone, I'm Landon Schlungen. Today we are doing the issue tracker from FreeCodeCamp. Again, I did this project a while back, but I think I can do it better now that I am older and wiser. So we have to make it functionally similar to this project right here, where we can add an issue to this API test project. So in this case, I'll say issue 3, and the text will be need to do something. Created by Landon, and then assigned to Landon, or these are optional though. And then when I create it, it says we created this, and it's assigned to no one, but it's open, and its ID is this. So I can copy this ID, and I can even view it on, if I go to /API/issues API test, I can actually give it a filter and filter out that ID, and there's the one I just added. I can also delete this issue. So if I just paste that in, it will delete it. I can also update it. So if I add that ID, I can say the title is actually issue number 5 and then submit that. And then it'll be successfully updated and be issue number 5 now. So you can check that by going $ID again. And there we can see it updated to issue 5. And then we can also delete it and then it will not be there anymore. So again, if I go forward, should not be here. Yeah, so I just refreshed and now it's gone. So that's what we have to do. And, we can go to different projects too. So the way we go to a different project is, so this is the API test project. So maybe we want to go to my own project. And now we can create issues under the project of Landon. So what do I have issues with? I don't know, need a haircut. And we can submit this issue created by me. I also need to fill this out, I guess. Do haircut and then create it. And then it will get put right underneath. I can also close it or delete it. So right now I have to do it. If I close it, then it means it's done. And it gives me this prompt. But yeah, I can also delete from here. Okay, so that's the whole project. Now, how do we actually build this? If you notice, this thing actually uses a database under the hood to store all of this data. But we do actually have to connect to MongoDB for this, which is pretty neat. It's actually widely used database technology, and I think it's very useful to know. So I'm going to be completing this project locally. You can try Replit, but I don't really like Replit because it's slow. So I would recommend doing it locally as well, just like me. It'd be more consistent with what real software developers do. So go to the GitHub repo. Make sure you have Git installed if you don't have it already installed, and copy the HTTPS clone. And then we can go into VS Code. Also make sure you have VS Code installed. And then inside the terminal, all we have to do is git clone and paste in that link, and it will clone into here as boilerplate projects issue tracker. And then I'm going to open up that folder. Here's the issue tracker. I could also change the name of this, but I'm just going to leave it for now. All right, most of the work is going to be done in this API.js route, but first I'm going to want to connect to my database. So to do that, we're going to use MongoDB. So to find MongoDB, don't look up the docs, actually look up MongoDB. And then we're going to log into our account. If you don't have an account, make sure to make one. I always log in with Google. That's my go-to. Right here, sign in. Make sure I can log in with Google. You can also use GitHub. Now, this isn't what you'll see out of the box if you just start MongoDB. You'll have to actually create a cluster, but most of the time you can just use the defaults and it will work exactly how it is for me right here. Okay, so to connect, we hit this connect button. Drivers, we're going to be using Node.js, and we want to install MongoDB. So we can copy this right here. Actually, I'm not actually sure if you need MongoDB or just Mongoose, but I'm going to install MongoDB anyway. Okay, so install MongoDB. we just go into here and npm I, or whatever they had pasted in. And this will install MongoDB version 4.1. It will also install all the other packages that we have inside package.json, which is body parser chai, chai HTTP, all of these. I'm going to also want to install nodemon, so I'm going to go npm I nodemon, just so I don't have to restart my server every time I save it. Okay, that was pretty quick. So now inside of our sample env, I actually want to create my own env file. And then I also want to add my connection string to my .env. So we're going to create our own. It's going to be .env. We're going to copy over whatever is here, paste that in, and then we're also going to add in Mongo URI. And that's going to be something that looks like that, but it's going to be this one right here. I don't want the full code sample. I just want this right here. Copy this. And then in order to get your password, if you don't know it, you can actually just change it right away. So let's actually try and change it. So if I go into my database access, I can change my password by just going to edit and then password. I can go edit password and then auto generate a secure password and copy it. I'm just going to copy that and paste it in to this password. Make sure to include the angle brackets when you paste it in. Okay, with that out of the way and saved, I can try and connect to MongoDB. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a file, actually not in routes, but inside of my main, not inside my routes, but inside of my main folder. I'm going to create a db connection.js file. And then inside of here, I'm going to be using that connection string. So all we have to do in here is get Mongoose. So yeah, I also need to install Mongoose. Sorry about that. So npm I mongoose. Yeah, it should install pretty quickly. And mongoose is basically, or I always say basically. I don't want to say basically. So what Mongoose works with MongoDB to make it easier to use. And so we just want to require Mongoose, and then we can use mongoose.connect and pass in that Mongo URI, and it should connect just right off of that. You know, there's none of this fancy stuff that you need to do with MongoDB to make it work. Mongoose makes it very simple for us. Okay, so now I can test this out. Also, I'm not using nodemon yet, so I'm going to add that just with a dev script, nodemon server.js, and then I can do npm run dev and see if we connect. Okay, there's no errors. No, I didn't connect yet because I need to use this file inside of my server.js file. So to actually use it, all I have to do is require /dbconnection.js, and then I'll actually use it. So, and there was no errors, so that means we're connected successfully. Okay, I probably should, never mind, we didn't successfully connect. Oh, you know why? It's because when there's a authentication failed error, if you run into this, it probably means you didn't update your password user correctly. So I generated this password and copied it, but I didn't update my user. Make sure you update your user before you do this, and then when I restart this, it should work. Let's try it again. We should wait a little bit to make sure, and there's still a handshake error, looks like. Okay, now it's working. You know what? I think I just didn't give it enough time to load and update my database to the correct password. I think that's why it failed that second time, because I tried it too fast. I think I just had to wait like 10 seconds and then it would work. So because now it's working fine, I'm not getting that handshake error. All right, so we have the connection to MongoDB now. Now we need to use Mongoose to create our models. So if you ever get confused with what Mongoose does, you can always look at their docs just by looking up mongoose.js, and then you can take a look at their documents and read the docs. So this is how you create a schema in Mongoose. I'm just going to copy what I have over, but you know, you can look through this and learn on your own. So to do this, I'm going to actually create a new file called models.js. And inside of here, I'm going to specify what we all have. This is different from my previous time I did this. I'm simplifying it. We need an issue schema and we need project schema. The issue schema has all these fields. Most of them are strings. Some of them are required, some of them aren't. This one's a Boolean. And then we create a project schema as well, and that only has a name, but it's required. So how do these relate to each other? Or we can have multiple issues with the same project ID, and that means there's that like 5 issues in like one project. Okay, so what do I have here? I have a project. So I'm going to see if we have a project first. If we don't have this project, I need to create a new project and then save it. You'll recognize that this is yelling at me, and that's because I need it to be an async function. So to make it async, I'm just going to put async in front, and I'm also going to modernize it and make an arrow function. And now those errors go away, which is perfect. Project model, you'll see that's underlined a little bit like, hey, you're not using this, and that is because we have to import those from that models file. So to import those from the models file, it's as easy as requiring them and then doing .issue and .project at the end. And then we can see that those errors go away, or they weren't even errors, it's just kind of letting us know that we didn't import them. New issue on FCC video, and we'll say video Landon and submit this issue. You can see it was created, new issue, and then to see them, we can go to this API test project. Let's see where this takes us. Oh yeah, it doesn't go anywhere because I didn't do any GET requests. I didn't complete the GET request. So actually I can see that inside of my actual database. So inside the database, you can go to database and browse collections. And we'll see issue tracker here. And we have issues and projects. I think I'll find it in issues, but yeah, I did this before. Let's see if I can find the one I just created. Oh, actually, here we go. It's actually called test. It's actually my test one. Yeah, so here it is. New issue on FCC video. And I created it twice on accident. Okay. Yeah, to change what this is, you can go into your Mongo URI and actually add an slash at the end and then change it to issue tracker 2, or I would change it to issue tracker 2. Let me do that actually, so it's not as confusing. Okay, so you know what I mean is inside your .env file, you have your connection string, and at the end, where it says .net slash, that's where you add the name of your collection, issue tracker 2, or in your case, just be issue tracker. And then when I think I have to rerun this, but when I save another one, then it will actually be in that collection. So let's try that. Go back here and let's add one. New Landon. Commit this issue. Created successfully. And then we can check and refresh this. All right, see, now you can see this issue tracker 2 is created. And then inside issues, we have our one issue of new and new. It also created that project, and that project is just API test. Just because this default page is API test, that's why. Okay, now let's work on getting all the issues so that when I go into this, it will actually show a list of all of them. So to do the get route, I'm going to replace this. The get route is an async function, arrow function, and we get the project name first of all, and then we find the project. If we can't find the project, then we say project not found, so it's not going to work, and we return. Otherwise, we get the issues by finding all the issues that are under this project ID. That's why we do the project first, so that we can get all the issues under this project. And then we actually filter them by the query params, which is rec.query. The rec.query gets everything after the question mark. Okay. If there's no issues, then we say no issues found. Otherwise, we return the issues. If there's any error, then we just say we could not get this issue with this ID. Okay. And now we should be able to click on this link and view the issues. All right, there we go. And it worked successfully. We can see that issue that I submitted earlier perfectly. Okay. Now we can work on updating an issue. The update portion is probably the more advanced portion, the longest one at least. And to update, it's usually commonly called a put in CRUD operations. And for the put, we first have to get the project name from rec.params, and then we get all this stuff from the body. This is so that we can update it with a new title, new text, new created by. If there's no ID that was passed in, we say there's a missing ID. If there's none of this stuff, then we can say error, there's no update field sent, so we can't do anything anyway. Otherwise, we can actually try and update our issue. So to update the issue, we first find our project to make sure that it actually exists. And then we can find our issue by doing issue model.find by ID and update. And with this function, all you have to do is pass in the ID, and then you can pass in the whole body. And if they're undefined, it won't change it. But if it does have something in it, then it will change that field. And we always want to update the updated on with the current date. And we do current date with new date. And then we save it and we say successfully updated. If there's an error in any of that process, then we can just do a catch-all and say could not update. All right, so now we should be able to update our issue. Let's try that. If I go into this, just make sure I saved. I saved. Let me make sure quick. If I go into my issue and I grab its ID by double clicking this and copying, and I go into update, yeah, and I do title of new title, and I submit this, then it says successfully updated. And if I go back to get all of them, we can see that indeed the title was updated with new title. So that works perfectly. Okay. Next thing is to delete. Okay, now let's take our locals 3000 and try it out in the FreeCodeCamp tests. Okay, here's our issue tracker. Solution link, say we've completed it. It's running the tests. Okay, perfect. It does all of these. See, they're all check marked, except for the last one, which is the 14 functional tests. So now let's do the functional tests. All right, the functional tests are found in the test folder, and then 2 functional tests. And you'll see that we have chai, and HTTP in here, and then we have a suite, and then suites can be used to organize our tests. I'm just going to copy what I have over and show you what I did. So these are all the different tests that they wanted us to do. I'll just go down all the issues here, or all the tests. So I have these 2 issue 1 and issue 2 variables up here. This is so that when I create these issues, I can delete them later. And that way, when I do these tests, it won't create a bunch of these extra issues that keep piling up every time I run it. Doing this test will create a real post request to our own server. So we're hitting the API/issues/testing123 route. And so our project is this testing123. And we're creating issue underneath it. The issue we're creating is called issue 1. It's a functional test and just doing some random values here. And then when I create it, I'm just making sure that what I get back is what I put in. And then, making sure that it equals each other. If it does, then it will pass. If it doesn't, it won't pass. And I also want to make sure, this is very important actually, to add a timeout of 10 seconds because sometimes for whatever reason, the first test, like sometimes it takes 5 seconds, sometimes it takes 3 seconds, sometimes it takes only like 1 second, but I still want this timeout of 10,000 so that it gives it enough time to run and it won't, it won't time out and move on without it actually completing the task of creating the issue. Because creating this issue, doing this post request affects all the other tests down the line. So yeah, we create another issue, and then this one we create an issue with missing fields, but it gives us an error. And then for the GET requests, we do 3 GET requests, one for viewing all the issues on a project, and we just make sure that what we get is okay. We check with a filter, and we just make sure that the first one we see is the same as our issue title and issue text of issue 1, because we're querying that ID. And then we try with multiple filters of title and text to make sure that we get those back as well. Now for the put request, we make sure we have a different title this time, and then we make sure that that title is, and we just make sure it's different and successfully updated. And then we make sure we can update multiple fields, so title and text, pretty straightforward. We make sure we can update an issue with missing ID. If there is, then it should say missing ID. Update an issue with no fields, then it will say no update field sent. Update it with an invalid ID. So this is just a random ID that's invalid. It wouldn't work for this. And it just says cannot update. Make sure it's an actual ID and not just invalid in there, because MongoDB will get mad and throw an error. Delete requests. Make sure that we can delete issue 1, and we also delete issue 2. You can only have one done in this test, so I put the done at the end of both of them. And then we make sure we can, if there's an invalid ID, it should say could not delete. And if there's a missing ID, it should say missing ID. All right, and then with this, it's not running our test right away because inside of our .env, we have to make sure no env test is uncommented out, and then we can restart it, and it should run everything. All right, npm run dev, and now it's running our tests, trying our functional tests, and looks like all of them are completing successfully. It says 14 passing. Perfect. So you can see this first one, it took 1,000 milliseconds, but sometimes if I run it again, it'll take up to 3 seconds, even 5 seconds. So that's why I made sure. Give it 10 seconds, and 100% of the time it should complete in that amount of time. And now we should be able to pass all of the tests on FreeCodeCamp. So now let's try this again. And there we go, test completed. If I hadn't done this one before, it would probably say, okay, we can move on. But yeah, that's it for this project. In order to submit a publicly visible URL or a GitHub link, I would recommend putting it on GitHub. If you want to know how to put it on GitHub, I would recommend looking at another video about how GitHub works and try and figure it out from there. I'm not going to show you how to do it, but there's plenty of tutorials out there that will happily let you know how to do it. I will say one trick for getting it on GitHub is to delete the hidden.git file. So in order to see that, you can go into your folders. In my case, it's inside of code, tutorials, FCC copy from, issue tracker. And then you can see our hidden files by enabling that. Okay, yeah, so show hidden files, folders, and drives. Okay, yeah. So I should be able to see it. And I think it might be this .git attribute. Oh, this .git folder. Here we go. So this .git folder is actually hidden. And in the case of you wanting to put it on your own GitHub, I would recommend deleting this, because it takes their Git folder and you want to make it your own project. So with getting rid of that and reloading this, you can see tracking turned off. So there's no yellows anymore or greens. In order to add those back in, we go into our terminal and we say git init, and it will initialize an empty repository in our name though. Okay. And we can add our remote origin and push it up to GitHub, all that jazz. But I'm not going to show you exactly how to do that. I just wanted to show you that quick trick to, hopefully not have to deal with so much hassle. All right, to recap, we created this issue tracker for our FreeCodeCamp project. We created a database connection to Mongo URI using Mongoose, which makes it much easier to use MongoDB. And then we created our models with Mongoose. We created a schema for issues and for project. Project is very simple. An issue has a lot of fields. And then we created our API with these routes of get, post, put, and delete, which is CRUD functionality. It's very common among all types of web apps. So if you become a web developer, there's a very high probability that you'll be doing a lot of this stuff. And then we created our functional tests. And we made it so these functional tests can be reran over and over again without getting too bloated. And overall, I would say it's been a good day and a good video. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment. I read all the comments, so if you're having issues, don't hesitate to ask me. I usually respond within, at least a day. So, yeah, I'll see you later, and goodbye.